Available for $3 on the Xbox Indie Marketplace, Alpha Squad is a top-down shooter from the people at Dragon Divide. While it's obvious that a lot of care and effort went into the shooter, Alpha Squad is mired in poor execution. The concept is simple. Drop into a combat zone, move from screen to screen shooting up enemies and collecting money, and then use that money to buy short-term power-ups and super weapons. This lends itself to some pointless fun. Killing enemies just for the sake of buying limited power-ups is entertaining in short doses. However, we discovered a serious hang-up in the gameplay with regards to transitioning from one screen to another. The maps are arranged so that players can enter most screens from several different sides. We found that using some of these entrances left our players surrounded by enemies immediately upon entering the new screen. Sometimes this would only result in our characters sustaining minor damage, but more often than not, we'd be overwhelmed and killed in a matter of seconds. The soundtrack and artwork are some of the highlights of the game. The cooperative and the competitive multiplayer could have made this game a lot more interesting if it weren't for the mobbing issues. We look forward to Dragon Divide's next effort, but we recommend you pass on Alpha Squad. Epic Dungeon is an old-school dungeon crawler from iHook Games, which is available on the Xbox Indie Marketplace for $1. Epic Dungeon can be brutal. The combat is fast, enemies come at you in waves, and death is permanent. The player can choose from one of 4 classes, each with its own speciality. The Barbarian has a wide area melee attack, the Engineer can summon an orb companion to fight alongside him, the Shaman can freeze enemies for a short time, and the Gambler can deal poison damage over an area. Players can invest points in skills other than their character's specialty, albeit at an increased cost. This allows players to mix and match skills to fit their playstyle. Combat might seem repetitive, but combining and chaining skills requires precise timing and keeps the player engaged. Of course, there is a wide array of loot to collect and sell, humorous, if not always beneficial, random events with branching paths, stats to improve, and an old-school soundtrack harkening back to the days of the NES. Looming over all of this is the constant threat of death, which adds a palpable tension to the gameplay. Not all gamers will appreciate Epic Dungeon's unforgiving gameplay, but those who can will find the experience highly rewarding as they experiment with skill combinations and stat distributions to dive as deep as they might into the game's titular dungeon. The puzzler Return All Robots is the first offering from the Philadelphia-based Space Whale Studios. Available on the PC and Xbox Indie Marketplace for $3, Return All Robots is a fresh, inventive take on the Lemmings formula of guiding creatures from point A to B while avoiding obstacles. Players are tasked with guiding friendly blue robots through a maze of evil red robots, bubbling vats of acid, blistering flames, frozen blocks of ice, and other menacing obstacles. To this end, they are given a special remote which sets all robots, friendly or otherwise, moving in the direction that the player is currently facing. The puzzles grow more complex as the player unlocks the strangely cute cyber turtle, which acts as a movable barrier, a heat ray to melt blocks of ice, and several other tools. This, along with the amazing 80s-inspired soundtrack by Andrew Aversa, aka Zircon, makes for an engaging, challenging experience. We here at elder-geek were really scratching our heads at some of the later puzzles, but were never overly frustrated. Though we found a few bugs, the urge to complete the puzzles in as few steps as possible kept us coming back for more. Return All Robots is a solid game, and for the $3 price tag, we'd recommend it to anyone, especially to fans of puzzlers. Tower Defense is by no means an underrepresented genre in the world of downloadable games. However, with its unique hand-drawn aesthetic and multiplayer features, Sketchy Tower Defense has made a name for itself in the indie gaming community. Available for $1 via the Xbox Indie Marketplace, Pixel Troll's offering does little to push the envelope aside from its art style. In order to protect their sketchy villages, players can build and upgrade a standard selection of towers including arrow, cannon, ice, and lightning towers. One of the more practical benefits of the copybook aesthetic is that the game plays out on grid paper, making it much easier to align towers. This really comes in handy as the enemies will quickly overwhelm you if your towers are not carefully placed. Considering the selection of creative maps, as well as the competitive and cooperative multiplayer, Sketchy Tower Defense is definitely worth a try. We wish the selection of towers was a bit more creative, and music certainly would have enhanced the experience, but anyone looking for a solid tower defense game could certainly do much worse.